Ayanda was the kind of woman everyone admired. She walked with quiet confidence, always dressed in beautiful, flowing African prints that told stories of culture and strength. In her small city of Lusanda, people greeted her with smiles, children waved, and even the market women would say, "That's a real lady." On the outside, her life looked perfect: a loving wife, a beautiful home, and a successful business she had built from scratch. But what no one saw was the storm she hid behind her calm smile. Ayanda had given her heart, her loyalty, and years of her life to a man who once promised to protect her, but had slowly started breaking her piece by piece. Every dinner she cooked without thanks, every night she waited alone while he was working late, every time he looked at his phone more than her. It all chipped away at her soul. But she stayed, because love does that to you. It makes you hope. It makes you forgive. It makes you blind. And so Ayanda smiled for the world, wore her gold bangles and walked like a queen. But inside her heart, something had started to shift. The silence wasn't weakness anymore. It was warning. Saifo wasn't always like this. In the early days he was charming, always calling Ayanda my queen, bringing her small gifts, holding her hand in public like she was his world. He used to send her messages just to say he missed her smile. Back then Ayanda believed they had something special, something real. But slowly everything started to change. He stopped talking to her. Not in a dramatic, yelling kind of way, but in silence that cut deeper than any words could. He would come home late, smelling like unfamiliar perfume, eyes tired but not from work. When Ayanda tried to ask, he'd mumble, "I'm just tired," and disappear into the shower. His phone was always face down now, always on silent, and when it buzzed, he'd glance quickly and walk away to answer it in another room. Ayanda noticed everything. The way he stopped saying "I love you," the way he started eating dinner without waiting for her, the way he looked at her like she was just furniture in the house, something useful but unnoticed. She began to feel like a stranger in her own home, like her presence didn't matter. And what hurt more than the lies was the indifference. It was as if she no longer existed in his world. No more kisses. No more good nights. Just long silences and fake smiles. Sometimes she would stand in front of the mirror and whisper to herself, "What did I do wrong?" But deep down she knew. This wasn't about her. It was about him. The man she married was disappearing, and in his place was someone cold, distracted, and distant. Yet Ayanda never raised her voice. She still packed his lunch, still ironed his shirts, still hoped the sweet version of Saifo would come back. But her heart was growing tired. His silence was loud now, so loud it echoed through every corner of her soul. And though she said nothing, something inside her was quietly preparing for the moment when enough would finally be enough. Ayanda had always believed in working for her own dreams. While Saifo spent carelessly and made excuses, she saved every extra rand she could from her boutique sales. Late nights, early mornings, running her shop even when she was sick, she gave it everything. And when the day finally came, when she walked into that car dealership and pointed at the sleek, black SUV with chrome details, her hands were shaking. Not from fear but from pride. She didn't need anyone to co-sign. No help from Saifo. That car was hers. Every single cent earned through her own sweat and sacrifices. Driving it home that day, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. As the wind played with her braids and her favorite Afrobeat song blasted from the speakers, she smiled the biggest smile in months. That SUV wasn't just a vehicle. It was a symbol. A reminder that no matter how broken things felt at home, she was still capable. She still had power. She still had herself. Every time she stepped into that car, she held her head higher. Whether she was going to the market or to meet clients, people turned to look. "That's Ayanda's ride," they'd say. And she loved that. It was one of the few things in her life that Saifo hadn't touched, hadn't tainted with his cold silence or careless lies. She kept it spotless, always smelling like fresh leather and lavender. Sometimes, after closing her shop, she'd just sit in it for a few quiet minutes, holding the steering wheel like it was her anchor in a stormy life. It was more than transportation. It was her safe space, her small victory in a marriage that had stopped feeling like home. In that SUV, she wasn't just a wife trying to hold on. She was Ayanda, the woman who built something beautiful for herself. And for once, she didn't have to share the credit or the keys. Or so she thought. It was a quiet Thursday morning. The sun was soft, the birds were singing, and Ayanda was getting ready for her usual errands. She picked up her handbag, grabbed her keys from the hook, and walked out the front door with her usual calm. But the moment she stepped into the driveway, her steps froze. The space where her SUV always stood, her pride, her gift to herself, was completely empty. At first she thought maybe she had parked it somewhere else. She looked around, her heart beating faster, her mind racing. But no, the car was gone. She walked back inside, trying not to panic. "Saifo," she called out. He was sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing was wrong. "Where's my car?" Without even looking up, he said casually. "I sent it for servicing. It was making some noise." Ayanda stared at him. "You sent it? Without asking me?" He finally looked up, shrugged, and said, "I was trying to help." But his eyes told a different story. There was no concern, no apology, no explanation. Just blank coldness, like he couldn't care less. 3 days passed, and Ayanda still hadn't seen her car. Saifo kept avoiding her questions, giving short answers like, "It's still at the garage," or, "They're waiting for a part." But every time he spoke, her gut told her something wasn't right. She didn't push. She just watched, listened, and waited. And then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Ayanda drove to town in her friend's car to pick up supplies for her boutique. That's when she saw it, parked right outside a mid-range hotel in Lasanda. Her heart stopped. There it was, her SUV. Her clean, beautiful, hard-earned car, parked perfectly in the sun like it belonged there. At first she thought maybe it was someone else's. But as she stepped closer, she recognized the tiny scratch on the back bumper, the same scented air freshener hanging from the mirror. It was hers, no doubt. And then she looked inside. Sitting in the front passenger seat, wearing large sunglasses and a short dress, was a young woman. She looked relaxed, too relaxed. In her hand was a pink milkshake, and over her shoulders was Saifo's favorite hoodie. The same hoodie Ayanda had washed 100 times. The same one he used to wear on Sundays while watching TV beside her. Ayanda's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there on the sidewalk watching. The girl inside the car laughed suddenly, holding up her phone, clearly taking selfies. Ayanda's hands trembled, but she didn't let the pain show on her face. People walked past, unaware that a woman was silently witnessing the biggest betrayal of her life. She didn't march over. She didn't scream. Instead, she slowly turned around and walked back to her friend's car. Inside, she closed the door gently, her face blank, her heart in pieces. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about the disrespect, the lies, the way he had given something so precious of hers to someone else. And in that quiet moment, Ayanda realized something had broken for good. Ayanda didn't plan to come back. She told herself that seeing the car once was enough, that she didn't need to see more. But something inside her, a small voice that refused to stay quiet, pushed her to return the next day. Maybe for answers. Maybe for proof. Or maybe just to finally kill the last bit of hope she was holding on to. She parked across the street from the same hotel. It was around noon, and the sun was harsh, but her eyes stayed fixed on the hotel entrance. And there it was again, her SUV in the same spot. The girl was back too, sitting in the front seat, this time chewing gum and scrolling through her phone. She looked too young, too carefree, like she had no idea how much pain she was causing. Then Saifo appeared. He came out of the hotel wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, sunglasses on, walking with that lazy confidence he always had. Ayanda's breath caught when she saw him laugh and hand the girl a takeaway box. The girl giggled and reached for it, and then right there in front of the world, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a quick, nervous kiss. It was slow, familiar, intimate. The kind of kiss you give when you think no one's watching, or when you just don't care who is. Ayanda stood there, completely still. Her throat tightened, but no tears came. Her fingers curled into fists, but she didn't shout. There was no scene. No dramatic outburst. Just silence. Heavy, cold silence. She looked at the two of them one last time. Her car. Her husband. Her stolen dignity, all wrapped into one ugly picture. And then without a single word she turned around. Her footsteps were steady. Her eyes dry. But inside something had died. And something else had started to rise. She didn't need to confront him. She didn't need to fight. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is walk away without looking back. The next morning, Ayanda woke up early. She didn't cry. She didn't talk to anyone. She just got dressed in a soft blue blouse, tied her braids neatly, and walked out the door with quiet determination in her eyes. There was no shaking in her hands, no anger on her face. Her heart was heavy but her mind was clear. She had finally accepted the truth. Saifo had given her car to another woman. And now it was time to do what needed to be done. She walked into the Lysander police station and stood in line, waiting patiently. When it was her turn, the officer looked up, expecting another noise complaint or petty theft report. But Ayanda's calm voice surprised him. "I'd like to report a stolen vehicle," she said. The officer blinked. "Do you have proof of ownership?" She nodded and reached into her bag. Every paper was neatly clipped. Purchase documents, registration, insurance, even service records. Everything had her name on it. She had worked too hard for that SUV to let it go quietly. The officer looked through the documents and nodded. "And who took the car, ma'am?" Ayanda didn't flinch. She didn't say his name. She didn't tell them about the hotel or the kiss or the betrayal. None of that mattered here. "It was taken without my permission," she said simply. "That's all." The officer gave her a form to sign. She filled it out slowly, carefully. Her handwriting was steady. No emotion, no drama, just facts. The law didn't care about heartbreak. The law didn't care about who wore whose hoodie. It only cared about what could be proven. And Ayanda had all the proof she needed. When she stepped out of the station, the sun hit her face, and for the first time in days, she felt something strange: peace. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't begged. She had used her voice the right way, in a place where her truth mattered. As she walked away from the police station, she whispered to herself, "I may have lost a man, but I won't lose my self-respect." The next morning, just as the sun was rising over Lysander, 2 police officers pulled up outside the same hotel. They had the registration details, the make and model, and even the license plate number. It wasn't hard to find the car. It was parked in plain sight, exactly where Ayanda had seen it. Clean, shiny, and still smelling of lavender. But what made the officers pause wasn't the car. It was the scene inside it. Saifo sat in the driver's seat, laughing like nothing was wrong, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting on the thigh of the young woman beside him. She wore bold red lipstick, long braids, and a tight dress like she was headed to a party. She had her feet on the dashboard and was sipping an iced coffee like she owned the world. When the officers knocked on the window, she rolled it down with a smile. "Good morning," one of them said. "Whose vehicle is this?" She didn't even blink. "He gave it to me," she replied, pointing to Saifo. "It's ours now." That was all they needed. The officers asked them both to step out. Saifo's smile disappeared the moment he realized this wasn't a joke. "Wait, what's going on?" he asked. "There's been a misunderstanding." But it was too late. One officer read out his rights while the other began taking photos of the car. The mistress looked confused. "What's happening? Why are you arresting him?" "Ma'am," the officer said calmly, "this car belongs to someone else. It was reported stolen." People gathered around, curious. Phones came out. Pictures were taken. And in the middle of it all, Saifo stood frozen, handcuffed, his face red with shock and shame. His expensive watch gleamed in the sun, but his pride had shattered. The same man who used to walk with his chest out was now being led to a police van, his reputation falling apart with every step. All because he thought Ayanda would stay silent. But she had spoken, in the loudest way possible. With proof. With action. And now the world was watching. It happened fast, but it felt like slow motion for Saifo. One moment he was laughing in the car with his new flame, and the next he was standing on the sidewalk in handcuffs. Blue and red lights flashed all around him. Police sirens echoed through the morning air. People passing by started to slow down. Heads turned. Phones came out. And within seconds, a small crowd had formed around the scene. The girl in the red lipstick looked around, panicked. She pulled her sunglasses down and whispered, "Saifo, what's happening?" But when the officer opened the back of the police van, she did what Saifo never expected: she ran. In her heels, she took off down the street, leaving him alone, confused and humiliated. Someone in the crowd gasped, "Wait, isn't that Ayanda's car?" That's her husband, right? Is this the one that bought the car with her own money?" The whispers grew louder, the stares sharper. Saifo tried to explain, but his voice was drowned by the noise. The clicking of camera shutters, the recording phones, the silent judgment in every eye watching him. The same man who once walked like a king was now standing in the street like a thief, his image shattered right there on the pavement. The confident, respected man he pretended to be was gone. All that remained was the truth, ugly, exposed, and undeniable. The suit didn't help him now. The charm, the fake smiles, none of it could save him. Ayanda hadn't raised her voice, hadn't posted a thing. But somehow, her silence had spoken louder than any scream. The officers guided him into the van, but Saifo didn't look up. He couldn't. He was no longer just a man in trouble. He was a story, a lesson, a warning. And Ayanda's car, it was still there, shining under the sun, still spotless, still hers. And soon it would be going back to the only person who had truly earned it. Ayanda arrived at the police station just after noon. She was dressed in a simple cream dress, her head held high, her steps calm and unhurried. The officers greeted her with quiet respect. They already knew who she was. Her name was on the report. Her name was on the car. And now her name was being whispered all over Lusanda. She didn't ask about Saifo. She didn't ask about the girl. She just walked to the front desk, opened her handbag and handed over her ID. An officer nodded and brought out a clipboard. "Your vehicle has been recovered, ma'am," he said. "We just need you to sign this release form." Ayanda took the pen, signed without hesitation, and handed it back. Then they gave her the keys. She looked down at them for a second. Those same keys she used to carry with pride, the ones she used to hang on that little hook by the door. They felt heavier now, not because of the metal, but because of everything they had been through. But she took them, quietly, without a single tear. And just as she turned to leave, Saifo appeared from one of the back rooms, escorted by a plainclothes officer. His shirt was wrinkled, and his confidence was nowhere to be found. His eyes locked on her immediately. "Ayanda, wait," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. She paused for half a second but didn't turn around. She didn't say a word. Not why, not how could you, not even goodbye. Her silence was louder than any sentence she could have spoken. She didn't need an explanation. She didn't want an apology. She had already heard enough lies. Saifo stepped forward, reaching slightly desperate. But she kept walking straight past him out the door into the sunlight. That was the day Saifo realized what it meant to lose a real woman. Not through screaming or revenge, but through pure, powerful silence. Ayanda didn't just take her car back that day. She took back her dignity, her peace, her power. By the next morning, Saifo's downfall was everywhere. The story spread across Lusanda like wildfire. Every gossip blog, Instagram page, and WhatsApp group was buzzing. Screenshots of the police scene. A blurry video of him getting into the van. The headline that made it to almost every phone in the city. Husband gives stolen car to mistress. Ends up in cuffs. People couldn't stop talking. That's Ayanda's car, right? Wasn't she the one who built her own fashion business? Imagine giving another woman your wife's car. Eesh. Saifo's name, once said with respect at parties and business meetings, had turned into a joke overnight. Memes flooded the internet. One even showed him in handcuffs with the caption, "When you forget who paid the car installments." Meanwhile, Ayanda? She didn't say a word. But her silence made her shine even brighter. She was trending for all the right reasons: strength, grace, dignity. Women across Lusanda and beyond started reposting her photo in that soft cream dress from the police station. One page called her the queen who walked in silence. Another wrote, "Not all revenge is loud. Some just comes with keys and peace." Ayanda became a symbol. A reminder that you don't need to scream to be heard. That walking away with your head high is sometimes the loudest clapback of all. But Saifo? His phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but it wasn't friends calling. It was reporters. It was angry clients. It was his boss. He got called in for a meeting. That same day, he was told to take an unpaid leave until further notice. His side of the story didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. And worse, it was public. In just 24 hours, Saifo had gone from a proud, successful man to the face of betrayal, stupidity, and shame. And Ayanda? She didn't post. She didn't respond. She just lived, glowing, quiet, free. Saifo never thought it would come to this. Just a few days ago, he was living like a king, laughing with his young girlfriend in a car he didn't pay for. walking around Lysanda like no one could touch him. But now everything had crumbled. And it crumbled fast. The girl, the one with red lipstick and a soft laugh, had disappeared. Blocked his number. Blocked him on social media. Didn't respond to a single message. She was gone like smoke, like she had never existed. Maybe she was embarrassed. Maybe she just never cared. Whatever the reason, she left him just when he needed someone to stand beside him. His job wasn't any better. His boss called him in after the story went viral. No greetings, no smile, just a short sentence. "We'll be suspending you until we investigate further." That was it. Years of working in that office all wiped away in one cold meeting. No one even stood up for him. No one even looked him in the eye. And the worst part? His friends, his so-called boys, the ones who used to laugh and drink with him, stopped answering his calls. One by one they disappeared too. His messages sat on read. His jokes left unseen. No one wanted to be connected to the man who humiliated his wife and ended up in handcuffs. Now Saifo was sitting in his mother's old flat, on a couch that smelled like dust and memories. His nice apartment was no longer an option. He couldn't afford it. He looked around at the peeling paint, the old TV, the silence, and it hit him. He had lost everything. Not just the car. Not just the girl. But the respect, the pride, the image he had worked so hard to build. And for what? A few stolen kisses? A lie that cost him everything? Meanwhile, Ayanda's name was still being spoken with admiration. She hadn't needed revenge. The universe had handled it for her. And Saifo? He was left with nothing but regret and the echo of a life he had destroyed with his own hands. Ayanda didn't say a word. Not online. Not in public. Not even in passing. She didn't post quotes about betrayal. Didn't throw shade on her Instagram story. Didn't like any of the viral posts about Saifo's scandal, even though her name was everywhere. Instead, she chose silence. But it wasn't the broken, quiet kind. It was the powerful, graceful kind. The kind that speaks louder than any caption ever could. And people noticed. She started showing up more. Not hiding. Not avoiding. But glowing. She walked into weddings and birthdays in bright, bold Ankara prints. Reds, golds, emerald greens. Her head held high, her smile soft but strong. She didn't wear pain. She wore power. She was seen having lunch with friends again, laughing in cafes, shopping at the market with music in her ears. One day, she walked into her boutique in a mustard yellow jumpsuit that turned heads. Customers clapped softly. One even whispered, "She looks like a woman reborn." There was no anger in her face. No revenge in her tone. Just peace. Real peace. The kind that comes when you finally let go of what was never meant for you. And without saying it, everyone knew, this was Ayanda's revenge. Not by fighting. Not by begging. Not by trying to prove anything to anyone. But by rising. Quietly. Beautifully. Completely. Even the same streets where people once pitied her, now carried whispers of admiration. Women smiled at her with a new kind of respect. Some stopped her just to say, "Thank you for reminding us that we can walk away too." Saifo's world had burned. But Ayanda? She had walked through the fire and come out shining. No hashtags. No drama. Just a woman who chose herself and never looked back. Ayanda never expected to become a symbol. She was just trying to survive. Trying to breathe. Trying to hold herself together when her whole world had cracked open. But quietly, something powerful began to happen. Messages started pouring in. Some from women she knew, many from strangers. A simple thank you for being strong. Here. A you gave us courage, there. One woman wrote, "I was scared to leave until I saw how you walked away with dignity." Another said, "I cried for you, but then I stood up for myself because of you." Ayanda would sit on her couch at night, reading those words, hand over her heart, tears softly sliding down her cheeks. Not from sadness but from something deeper. She had been so quiet, so calm. She thought no one noticed. But they did. And her silence, the same silence people used to mistake for weakness, was now her strongest voice. She never shouted. She never cursed his name. But by walking away, by protecting her peace, by standing firm without saying much, she showed other women that strength doesn't always look like noise. Sometimes it looks like soft steps, steady hands, and dry eyes when the heart is breaking. She began to understand that what she had done wasn't small. It was huge. It was brave. and it was contagious. Her phone didn't just ring with support, it rang with stories. Women sharing their pain. Women who stayed too long. Women who were finally ready to leave. And Ayanda listened. She replied when she could. She prayed for the ones she couldn't reach. And with every message she grew stronger. She hadn't just taken her car back. She had taken back her voice, even without speaking. She used to think she was just surviving heartbreak. But now she saw the truth. She had started a quiet revolution. One choice, one step, one silence at a time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft gold and orange, as Ayanda stood beside her SUV, her car, her pride, now parked right where it belonged. She wore a golden Ankara gown that hugged her perfectly, bold and royal. Her braids danced in the wind, her earrings catching the last light of the day. The street was quiet, but her heart was calm, steady. For the first time in a long while she felt whole. She ran her fingers along the hood of the car, not just remembering the pain, but also the strength it took to rise from it. The lies, the betrayal, the silence, the public shame. It had all tried to break her. But here she was, still standing, still shining. A small smile touched her lips. She didn't need applause. She didn't need anyone to say, "Well done." She already knew. She had faced the storm with grace, walked through fire without burning, and now she was standing in her light, unshaken. She looked at her reflection in the window, saw not just a woman but a queen reborn. And softly, more to herself than anyone else, she whispered, "He took my car. I took my crown back. Because queens don't need to scream. They just rise." And Ayanda had risen higher than ever before.